what working in a 1990s American office was really like boring history for sleep. Take a slow breath, settle into your chair, or perhaps into your bed, and imagine that it is a cool Monday morning sometime in the autumn of 1994. Outside, the parking lot is still wet from a night of light rain. Rows of nearly identical sedans sit quietly beneath gray skies. A few station wagons remain, stubbornly refusing to surrender to the decades-changing tastes. Somewhere nearby, someone is already warming up an aging Ford Taurus that rattles with a familiar metallic confidence. The air smells faintly of damp asphalt, cigarette smoke drifting from the designated smoking area, and freshly brewed coffee that has probably been sitting on a hot plate since before sunrise. You are not about to change the world today. You're going to update spreadsheets. Perhaps you'll answer the telephone 73 times. Perhaps you'll spend 45 minutes searching for a missing file that turns out to be exactly where everyone already looked. Perhaps your biggest achievement will be persuading the office copier not to eat another stack of expensive letterhead. And strangely enough, that was perfectly normal. When people remember the 1990s, they often think of loud things. Grunge music echoing through old headphones. Blockbuster movies. The first exciting whispers of the internet. Bright neon logos. Home computers appearing in family living rooms. Mobile phones the size of bricks. Television sitcoms that everyone somehow watched at exactly the same time. But behind all of those memories existed another world. A quieter one. A world hidden inside anonymous office buildings with mirrored windows, beige walls, fluorescent lights, and carpets whose mysterious geometric patterns seemed specifically designed to hide decades of spilled coffee. This was the kingdom of paperwork. The empire of cubicles. The age before smartphones transformed every waking moment into another opportunity to answer work messages. Ironically, despite all the complaints people had back then, many office workers unknowingly occupied the final years before work would begin following them home in their pockets. Of course, they couldn't possibly know that. As far as they were concerned, technology had already become impossibly advanced. Every few months another computer appeared. Every year software changed. Someone from information technology, usually wearing a belt full of keys and carrying an expression suggesting they hadn't slept properly since 1988, would arrive beside your desk announcing that everyone needed to stop using the old system because there was now a newer one. Everyone would sigh. Nothing has changed much in that respect. But before we spend the day inside this office, it's worth remembering how America itself arrived here. The Cold War had ended. For nearly half a century Americans had lived beneath the shadow of nuclear rivalry. Entire generations had grown up expecting geopolitical catastrophe at any moment. Then, almost surprisingly, the Soviet Union disappeared. History, at least according to some commentators of the era, had reached its happy ending. Peace seemed permanent. Markets expanded. Companies grew larger. Corporate America entered one of its most confident decades. Glass office towers climbed higher across city skylines. Suburban business parks stretched outward like carefully planted forests of concrete. Everywhere there were new headquarters. New consulting firms. New accounting companies. New insurance agencies. New banks. New marketing departments. New middle managers supervising other middle managers who supervised yet more middle managers. Entire ecosystems evolved inside office buildings. If medieval Europe built castles, the late 20th century built office parks. They weren't nearly as romantic. Nobody ever wrote poetry about conference rooms B and C. Yet millions of Americans spent more waking hours inside those spaces than almost anywhere else. The typical office looked remarkably similar whether you lived in Ohio, Texas, California, or North Carolina. Neutral colors dominated every surface. Beige. Gray. Muted blue. Off-white. Colors chosen not because anyone loved them, but because no one disliked them strongly enough to complain during committee meetings. The lighting came from long fluorescent tubes humming softly overhead. The sound became invisible after a while. Not because it disappeared. Because human beings are astonishingly good at ignoring constant discomfort. Rows of cubicles stretched across enormous floors. Each cubicle stood about shoulder height. Tall enough to hide your face. Short enough that your manager could still see whether you appeared busy. Privacy existed only in theory. You could hear every cough. Every sneeze. Every telephone conversation. Every awkward attempt at office humor. If someone microwaved fish for lunch. Everyone knew. Some smells ignored cubicle walls entirely. The cubicle itself represented one of the defining symbols of American office life. Invented decades earlier with surprisingly optimistic intentions, it was originally supposed to create flexible, human-centered workspaces. Instead, many companies discovered they could fit remarkable numbers of employees into relatively small areas. Efficiency won. Idealism quietly packed its bags. Each cubicle gradually became its occupant's tiny kingdom. A family photograph. Perhaps two. A calendar featuring scenic mountains. A motivational quote. Maybe a coffee mug reading world's okayest employee long before ironic mugs became fashionable. There might be a small cactus bravely surviving beneath fluorescent sunlight. Some employees developed genuine affection for these little spaces. Others counted the days until retirement. Most simply accepted them as the landscape of adulthood. Your desk itself would probably hold a substantial computer monitor. Not flat. Certainly not lightweight. A proper CRT monitor. Heavy enough to require careful lifting. Its curved glass reflected ceiling lights while quietly radiating warmth throughout the day. Behind it sat an equally solid desktop computer. Usually beige. Everything was beige. Even technology apparently wanted to blend into the carpet. When the computer started each morning, it didn't wake instantly. It introduced itself. Fans whirred. Hard drives clicked. The monitor flickered. Eventually came the familiar startup sounds that many people still remember decades later with surprising affection. Or perhaps mild trauma. Depending on how often their computer crashed. Waiting became an accepted part of office life. Waiting for computers. Waiting for printers. Waiting for files to load. Waiting for software to stop freezing. Waiting for Janet from accounting to finish using the fax machine. Patience wasn't merely a virtue. It was an employment requirement. Now imagine arriving just before 8:30. Your shoes click gently against polished tile in the building lobby. A receptionist smiles politely while answering multiple phone lines simultaneously. Nearby sits a visitor log written carefully in blue ink. Security exists, although nothing resembles today's electronic badge systems. You might wear a plastic identification card clipped proudly to your shirt pocket. Or perhaps no badge at all. Many offices relied on recognition. Everyone simply knew everyone else. If they didn't, someone asked questions. The elevator doors slide open. Inside stands an uncomfortable silence shared among strangers carrying briefcases. Nobody stares at phones. There are no phones to stare at. Instead, people examine floor numbers. Read yesterday's newspaper folded beneath an arm. Or simply avoid eye contact with impressive dedication. Finally, your floor arrives. The elevator opens. Instantly, the familiar atmosphere greets you. Telephones ringing somewhere in the distance. Printers rattling. Photocopiers humming. Coffee brewing. Conversations beginning quietly before growing louder throughout the morning. This orchestra of office machinery becomes the soundtrack of adulthood. Every profession develops its own music. Factories have engines. Hospitals have monitors. Construction sites have machinery. The American office had fax machines singing their peculiar electronic songs. One of the first rituals involved checking voicemail. Not email. Voicemail. You dialed into the company's phone system. Entered a security code. Listened patiently. Sometimes messages accumulated overnight. Clients. Managers. Suppliers. Family members calling the main office because there simply wasn't another reliable way to reach you during working hours. If something urgent happened, people phoned the office. The receptionist transferred calls. Entire companies functioned as communication hubs. Today that seems almost unimaginable. Back then it was ordinary. And perhaps that's one reason office friendships developed differently. People spent uninterrupted hours together. Lunch happened together. Coffee breaks happened together. Conversations wandered naturally because nobody glanced every 30 seconds at vibrating screens. There were distractions. Certainly. But they belonged to the office itself. Not the entire internet. As the morning settles in, you switch on your computer, straighten a stack of papers on your desk, take the first sip of coffee that's already slightly too hot, and glance around the sea of cubicles stretching toward the distant windows. Somewhere a printer begins its rhythmic chatter. Someone laughs loudly at a joke you've only caught the ending of. A fax machine squeals as another page arrives from hundreds of miles away, carrying information that, only a few years earlier, might have taken days to reach this building. Outside, commuters continue arriving beneath cloudy skies, each carrying briefcases, lunch bags, newspapers, and quiet hopes that today will pass without unexpected meetings. Some of those hopes will be disappointed. Because somewhere, at this very moment, a manager is walking toward the conference room carrying a folder labeled Agenda. And whenever someone carried an agenda in the 1990s, it almost always meant everyone else's morning was about to become much longer than expected. The office day has only just begun. In the next chapter, we'll step through your very first day as a new employee, navigating orientation videos, mysterious office etiquette, veteran coworkers, and the unspoken rules that every newcomer had to learn without anyone ever writing them down. Your first day in the cubicle kingdom. The first day begins long before anyone says good morning. It begins in your driveway, standing beside a car that probably has a cassette tape sitting permanently inside the stereo. The morning air carries that crisp mixture of dew and gasoline that seemed to accompany nearly every suburban commute in America. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler is still running, spraying neat arcs across freshly cut grass before families disappear into another ordinary weekday. You glance at your wristwatch. Not your phone. There is no phone in your pocket demanding your attention every 30 seconds. If someone wants to reach you, they'll call the office. If they're lucky, you'll actually be at your desk. Otherwise they'll leave a voicemail, and everyone involved will simply have to accept the ancient art of waiting. It sounds almost peaceful now. At the time, it simply felt normal. You pull onto the highway among thousands of other commuters. Brake lights glow like slow-moving constellations stretching toward the city. Every vehicle seems familiar somehow. Ford Tauruses. Chevrolet Luminas. Honda Accords. Jeep Cherokees. Dodge Caravans full of children headed toward school. Nobody is listening to a podcast. Instead, morning radio hosts chatter endlessly between songs. Local traffic reporters describe accidents that have already delayed hundreds of strangers. Somewhere, Pearl Jam plays. Somewhere else, Whitney Houston. Another station insists this new band called Green Day might actually become popular. The drive itself becomes part of working life. An invisible chapter that no company pays for, yet every employee contributes. Some spend 40 minutes commuting. Others spend 2 hours every day simply reaching the place where they'll sit under fluorescent lighting until evening. No one calls it work-life balance. That phrase has barely entered ordinary conversation. People simply call it going to work. Eventually the office building appears beyond rows of carefully trimmed hedges. Glass. Concrete. Mirrored windows reflecting the pale morning sky. Corporate architecture of the 1990s seemed determined to reassure everyone that absolutely nothing exciting would happen inside. Mission accomplished. You park among hundreds of nearly identical cars before taking one final look at yourself in the rearview mirror. Tie straight. Hair acceptable. Coffee stain avoided. Good enough. The revolving doors welcome another employee into the machine. Inside the lobby, everything feels slightly cooler than outside. Air conditioning hums constantly. The polished floor reflects overhead lights. Artificial plants stand proudly in oversized decorative pots, collecting almost as much dust as admiration. Behind the reception desk sits someone who somehow knows everyone's name. Receptionists occupied an extraordinary position within many offices. Officially, they answered phones and greeted visitors. Unofficially, they knew everything. Who had arrived late? Which department was arguing? Who might soon be promoted? Which executive preferred meetings before lunch? Who had quietly started dating someone from human resources? Information flowed toward reception like rivers toward the sea. Wise employees remained friendly. Very friendly. You introduce yourself. The receptionist smiles professionally. Oh, you're the new hire. Simple words. Yet suddenly every nearby employee knows exactly who you are. The new person. A curious species observed cautiously by existing office inhabitants. Soon someone from human resources appears. They carry a clipboard. Human resources in the 1990s specialized in paperwork with almost religious enthusiasm. Before you touch a computer. Before you meet your manager. Before anyone even tells you where the restroom is. There are forms. Tax forms. Insurance forms. Emergency contact forms. Benefit enrollment forms. Confidentiality agreements. Retirement plans. Policy acknowledgements. More signatures than some people produced while buying a house. Every page seems to require initials. Every paragraph contains language written by lawyers who feared commas almost as much as lawsuits. You sign. And sign. And sign again. Somewhere deep inside the building another filing cabinet quietly prepares to store your existence. The orientation video comes next. Almost every company had one. Produced with astonishing sincerity. Corporate music plays softly in the background while smiling employees walk through spotless offices carrying empty folders that clearly contain nothing. Everyone smiles constantly. Everyone appears delighted by meetings. Nobody ever jams the copier. Nobody forgets passwords. Nobody accidentally sends confidential documents to the wrong fax number. Reality remains politely absent. A cheerful narrator explains company values. Integrity. Teamwork. Innovation. Excellence. Words that appear in nearly every corporate brochure regardless of what the company actually manufactures. Sometimes there are dramatic reenactments. One employee helps another. A manager praises teamwork. Everyone laughs naturally. Or rather, they attempt to laugh naturally. Future generations would eventually recognize these videos as fascinating historical artifacts. Tiny time capsules preserving hairstyles, clothing, furniture, and management philosophies all in one wonderfully awkward package. The hairstyles alone deserve their own museum. When the video finally ends, someone asks if you have any questions. You don't. Not because everything makes sense. Because asking questions on the first day feels strangely dangerous. You smile politely. So far, so good. Everyone nods. Excellent. Now it's time to meet your department. Walking across the office floor for the first time feels oddly theatrical. People glance up from their desks. Some smile warmly. Others barely notice. A few offer the famous office nod. A gesture halfway between friendship and professional acknowledgement. You'll become fluent in office nodding soon enough. Your manager emerges from a nearby office. Unlike most employees, they possess actual walls. Perhaps even a window. Windows represented a kind of corporate currency. The higher someone climbed, the more sunlight they received. At the very top sat executives surrounded by panoramic views. Everyone else lived beneath fluorescent daylight forever. Your manager shakes your hand firmly. Welcome aboard. They're happy to have you. The team has been looking forward to your arrival. Whether that's true or not hardly matters. It's what managers say. They lead you through narrow aisles between endless cubicles. This is accounting. Small waves. This is marketing. More smiles. That's purchasing. Someone barely looks up. And over there is IT. You notice several people surrounded by partially dismantled computers. One of them holds a screwdriver like a surgeon preparing an operation. They look exhausted already. You instinctively decide not to bother them unless absolutely necessary. A wise decision. The information technology department during the 1990s occupied a curious social position. Everyone depended on them. Very few understood exactly what they did. When computers worked, nobody noticed. When computers stopped working, IT instantly became the most important people in the building. They developed remarkable patience. Mostly because they had no alternative. Every day included questions like, is the computer plugged in? Have you tried restarting it? No, the monitor isn't the computer. Entire careers were built upon gently correcting technological misunderstandings. Eventually you arrive at your cubicle. There it is. Your new professional home. At first glance, it seems almost disappointingly ordinary. Gray fabric walls. Metal frame. Desk. Telephone. Computer. Rolling chair. Small filing cabinet. Wastebasket. That's all. No ceremony. No dramatic music. Just 6 feet by 8 feet of carefully organized adulthood. Yet within weeks this modest space will begin changing. A coffee mug appears. Then family photographs. A favorite pen. Sticky notes. Perhaps a tiny radio. Someone gives you a birthday card. Another coworker leaves candy on your desk. Gradually the cubicle stops belonging to the company. Emotionally, it becomes yours. At least until someone from facilities decides to rearrange the entire floor because senior management has discovered another exciting organizational chart. Because of course they have. Your manager points toward the computer. This is your workstation. The machine waits patiently. A beige desktop computer beneath the desk. A heavy CRT monitor. A keyboard whose keys require satisfying pressure. A mouse with an actual rubber ball hidden underneath. That little rubber ball deserves a moment of appreciation. Modern optical mice require almost no maintenance. Ball mice demanded regular cleaning. Dust collected. Lint accumulated. Eventually the cursor wandered across the screen with the enthusiasm of a sleepy turtle. Employees learned to remove the ball, scrape away tiny rings of dirt with fingernails or paper clips, then reassemble everything. An oddly intimate relationship developed between humans and office equipment. Machines possessed personalities. Some printers behaved reliably. Others chose random moments to rebel. Everyone knew which copier should be avoided. Nobody trusted the fax machine near accounting. Not after, well. Nobody really remembered why. Tradition alone kept suspicion alive. Your computer boots slowly. Windows loads. Perhaps Windows 3.1. Perhaps Windows 95 if the company recently upgraded. The startup sound feels almost optimistic. Like technology itself is announcing. Today might work. Your manager hands you a stack of manuals. Software instructions. Company procedures. Telephone directories. Emergency contacts. Printed documentation everywhere. In the 1990s, information still occupied physical space. Knowledge had weight. Entire shelves bent beneath binders explaining systems that would eventually disappear forever. You flip through one. Tabs separate different sections. Someone has highlighted important pages years earlier. Margins contain handwritten notes from the previous employee. Tiny archaeological traces of another working life. You wonder who sat here before you. Did they retire? Receive a promotion? Move across the country? Or simply decide they'd had enough fluorescent lighting for one lifetime? Their fingerprints have long vanished. Their habits remain. The drawer still sticks slightly unless pulled from the left side. The chair leans a little. One cabinet lock only works after gentle persuasion. Objects remember people in subtle ways. Even offices. Late morning arrives. Co-workers begin introducing themselves one by one. Some immediately welcome you. Others remain politely distant until you've survived a few weeks. Office friendships grow slowly. Unlike school, nobody expects instant companionship. Trust develops through countless ordinary moments. Helping locate missing forms. Sharing extra pens. Warning newcomers which coffee pot contains fresh coffee. And which one has been slowly burning since 7 o'clock. These small kindnesses become social currency. You quickly discover that every office possesses unwritten rules. Nobody formally explains them. Everyone somehow knows them. Don't microwave fish. Replace the coffee if you drink the last cup. Never steal someone's favorite stapler. Return borrowed office supplies eventually. Avoid scheduling meetings late Friday afternoon unless civilization itself is collapsing. Respect birthday cake. Especially birthday cake. Lunch approaches. Around noon, the office transforms. Chairs roll backward. Telephones grow quieter. The smell of reheated leftovers drifts through the cubicles like invisible weather. Microwaves begin their endless work. Plastic containers emerge from refrigerators. Some employees leave for nearby restaurants. Others gather in break rooms. A few simply remain at their desks, eating sandwiches while reading newspapers. Not scrolling. Reading. Paper rustles softly. Sports sections disappear first. Business pages remain untouched surprisingly often. The office breathes differently during lunch. Formal conversations dissolve. Managers become ordinary people discussing weekend plans. Accounting argues about baseball. Marketing debates television shows. Someone proudly displays photographs developed from disposable cameras after a recent vacation. Everyone gathers around. Vacation pictures required effort back then. You couldn't simply show them instantly. You waited. Finished the film. Dropped it off. Collected printed photographs days later. The anticipation made memories feel strangely valuable. As your first day continues, you begin realizing something important. This office isn't merely a workplace. It's a small society, complete with customs, traditions, heroes, villains, legends, and mysteries. Somewhere there's an employee everyone consults despite holding no impressive job title. Someone knows every shortcut. Someone can fix every printer. Someone remembers where documents from 1987 are stored. Institutional memory lives inside ordinary people. The company depends upon them more than annual reports ever admit. Outside, afternoon sunlight shifts across the parking lot. Inside, fluorescent lights remain exactly the same. Time passes differently here. Measured not by sunsets, but by coffee refills, ringing telephones, and the comforting rhythm of keyboards clicking across a sea of cubicles. And before long, those sounds begin to feel less like noise, and more like the heartbeat of an entire generation's working life. Cubicles, computers, and the beautiful monotony of everyday work. By the second week, something curious begins to happen. The office no longer feels like unfamiliar territory. The maze of gray cubicles slowly transforms into a map you carry inside your head. You no longer hesitate at every intersection. You know which hallway leads to accounting, which corner hides the supply closet, and which photocopier should be approached with extreme caution, preferably after offering a small prayer to the gods of office machinery. It's remarkable how quickly human beings adapt. Give someone enough time, and even fluorescent lighting starts to feel natural. Almost. The workday begins before the work itself. At precisely 8:30, or perhaps 8, depending on the company, the office comes alive in stages, like an orchestra tuning its instruments. One computer whirs to life. Then another. A printer coughs. A telephone rings somewhere in the distance. Someone clears their throat. Coffee pours into ceramic mugs. The first jokes of the morning drift lazily over cubicle walls. Gradually, the building wakes. Outside, sunlight brightens the parking lot. Inside, nothing changes. The fluorescent lights remain exactly as they were yesterday. And the day before that. And probably 3 years ago. Office lighting existed outside the laws of nature. Rain or sunshine made very little difference. Many employees joked that they could leave the building after 10 hours and be genuinely surprised to discover whether it was still daylight. Some occasionally forgot what the weather had been. You entered beneath gray skies. You emerged into darkness. Winter especially seemed to vanish entirely behind office walls. Morning arrived during the commute. Evening arrived during the commute home. The actual day belonged to the building. You settle into your chair. The chair squeaks. Every office had at least one chair that squeaked dramatically enough to announce every movement. Perhaps yours. Perhaps Bob's. Probably Bob's. Poor Bob. He'd become famous without ever intending to. Your desk is slowly becoming personal. A framed photograph sits beside the monitor. Maybe it's your family. Maybe your dog. Maybe a mountain you once visited and promised yourself you'd return to someday. Beside it sits a coffee mug. Not a disposable paper cup. A proper ceramic mug. Heavy. Reliable. Slightly stained despite repeated washing. Many office workers became surprisingly attached to their mugs. People borrowed pens. People borrowed staplers. Nobody borrowed Karen's coffee mug. Not after the incident. No one speaks much about the incident anymore. But everyone remembers. Because offices never truly forget. The computer monitor hums quietly. Its curved glass reflects tiny pieces of the room behind you. The screen resolution feels wonderfully ordinary by modern standards. Documents fill only part of the display. Windows overlap awkwardly. Everything seems just a little larger than necessary. Yet people accomplished astonishing amounts of work with these machines. Technology always seems primitive in hindsight. Until you remember it was once considered miraculous. Only 10 years earlier, much of this work would have happened entirely on paper. Now spreadsheets calculate automatically. Word processors eliminate correction fluid. Databases search records in seconds rather than hours. Employees complain constantly about how slow computers have become. Ironically, these computers are among the fastest anyone in the building has ever owned. Progress has a curious habit. It immediately becomes the new normal. Your keyboard receives constant attention. Unlike modern laptops with shallow keys, these keyboards possess real depth. Each key produces a satisfying click. Some employees become astonishingly fast typists. Their fingers dance confidently across plastic keys without hesitation. Others hunt carefully. One letter at a time. Nobody judges too harshly. Not yet. Typing speed still feels like a practical skill rather than an expectation. Nearby, someone is using a dot matrix printer. The sound is unmistakable. A rapid mechanical chatter. Almost musical. Almost. The printer grabs continuous sheets of paper connected by perforated edges. Tiny holes run along both sides. Later, someone will carefully tear those edges away, leaving neat stacks of freshly printed reports. Children today might mistake these papers for strange historical artifacts. Office workers recognize them instantly. The reports often stretched several feet long. Financial statements. Payroll summaries. Inventory records. Data flowed across endless green and white striped paper. There was something strangely comforting about physical reports. Heavy. Substantial. You could hold information in your hands. Managers loved carrying thick folders. The thicker the folder, the more important the meeting seemed. Whether anyone actually read every page remained another question entirely. The telephone rings. You answer before the third ring. That was considered good manners. Good morning. Every company had its preferred greeting. You spoke clearly. Professionally. Confidently. Telephone etiquette mattered. Without video calls, without instant messaging, without emails dominating communication, your voice represented both yourself and your company. Smiling while speaking genuinely changed how you sounded. Receptionists knew this. Salespeople absolutely knew this. Some managers insisted everyone should smile before answering the phone. Whether anyone actually did. Well. Managers believed many optimistic things. The telephone itself sat permanently within reach. Heavy. Cream-colored. Covered with buttons that clicked satisfyingly. Some featured multiple blinking lights representing different phone lines. Others included small displays showing extension numbers. Nothing felt disposable. Everything appeared built to survive decades. Many telephones did exactly that. Voicemail remained slightly mysterious. You dialed in. Entered your password. Waited patiently while the automated system slowly announced each message. There are 3 new messages. Why every voicemail system spoke so slowly remains one of history's great unanswered questions. Perhaps they assumed everyone enjoyed suspense. You listen carefully. There is no rewind button quite as convenient as modern apps. Miss one phone number, and you're listening from the beginning again. Patience becomes a professional skill. Across the aisle, the fax machine suddenly awakens. Its electronic squeal cuts gently through the office. Everyone recognizes the sound immediately. A document is arriving. From another city. Perhaps another state. Possibly another country. Within moments, paper slides into the output tray. Warm. Freshly printed. Slightly curled. Today we scarcely think about sending files across continents instantly. In 1994, this still carried a hint of magic. Entire business deals depended upon fax machines. Contracts. Purchase orders. Legal documents. Medical records. Everything traveled through telephone lines, transformed into tiny electronic whispers before becoming paper once again. The process seemed almost miraculous. Until the fax jammed. Then it became deeply personal. Office equipment possessed moods. Or at least employees believed it did. The copier never malfunctioned when someone had plenty of time. It waited patiently until 15 people needed copies before an important meeting. Then. Paper jam. Always paper jam. Employees approached photocopiers with the cautious respect normally reserved for wild animals. Too much confidence invited disaster. You lifted panels. Removed wrinkled paper. Closed compartments. Pressed start. Nothing. Pressed harder. Still nothing. Eventually someone from administration wandered over. Oh. They pressed exactly the same button. Suddenly it worked. Nobody could explain why. Some mysteries simply accepted no explanation. Around 10:30 came the first unofficial coffee migration. Without anyone making announcements, people drifted toward the break room. Coffee wasn't merely a beverage. It functioned as social infrastructure. Conversations began there. Rumors spread there. Friendships formed there. Occasionally careers advanced there. The coffee itself. Well. Let's describe it generously. It existed. Large glass pots rested on warming plates. Fresh coffee tasted acceptable. Coffee left sitting for 3 hours developed remarkable characteristics. Strong enough to remove paint. Hot enough to melt optimism. Yet astonishing numbers of people drank it willingly. Some even preferred it. Habit can accomplish extraordinary things. The break room represented neutral territory. Hierarchy softened slightly. Vice presidents stood beside interns waiting for coffee. Everyone shared the same microwave. Everyone searched the same refrigerator for forgotten lunches. The refrigerator itself became a small archaeological site. Plastic containers from unknown weeks. Yogurt approaching scientific significance. Mystery leftovers no one claimed. Eventually someone taped a polite note to the door. Please remove old food every Friday. Nobody did. Eventually another note appeared. More firmly worded. The cycle continued indefinitely. Human civilization, in miniature. Returning to your desk, you discover a yellow sticky note attached to your monitor. Call Susan. No further explanation. Everyone knew Susan. Or perhaps several Susans. Offices contained surprising numbers of people sharing identical first names. Entire conversations required clarification. Which Mike? Tall Mike. Oh. There were usually at least 4 Mikes. Names became descriptive phrases. Accounting Steve. Marketing Lisa. Tall Mike. Mustache Dave. New Jennifer. Old Jennifer. No one found this unusual. It simply made communication possible. As the morning quietly drifts toward noon, you notice another subtle rhythm of office life. People rarely worked continuously for hours without interruption. Instead, work unfolded in gentle waves. Concentration. Phone call. Conversation. Paperwork. Coffee. Typing. Meeting. More paperwork. Another phone call. The pace felt slower than many modern offices. Not because people worked less. Because communication itself required time. Messages traveled physically. Documents moved by hand. Questions involved walking to someone's desk rather than sending a dozen instant messages. Ironically, people often interrupted each other more. But somehow, they also seemed slightly less hurried. There was still room for ordinary conversation. Room for silence. Room simply to think. And thinking, as it turns out, was once considered a perfectly acceptable activity during working hours. The afternoon is approaching now. Soon, managers will begin scheduling meetings. The conference rooms will fill with binders, overhead projectors, legal pads, and coffee that somehow tastes even older than it did this morning. And there, around polished wooden tables beneath humming fluorescent lights, another essential chapter of life inside a 1990s American office will quietly unfold. Meetings, managers, and the strange rituals of corporate life. If there was one activity that united nearly every office worker in America during the 1990s, regardless of industry, salary, or job title, it was attending meetings that could have been much shorter. Not always. But often. Sometimes remarkably often. By now, you've learned to recognize the warning signs. Your manager appears at the entrance of your cubicle carrying a legal pad. Their expression is pleasant enough, but there's a certain determined look that says someone, somewhere, has decided this discussion requires 8 people instead of 2. Conference room B, 10 minutes. That's all. No explanation. No agenda. No hint about whether this will take 20 minutes or consume the better part of your afternoon. You simply nod. Because that's what everyone does. The conference room itself feels strangely familiar, even if you've never entered this particular one before. Every office seems to have built them from the same blueprint. A long wooden table occupies the center of the room. Rolling chairs surround it like loyal subjects waiting for a king who never quite arrives. One wall is covered by a large whiteboard already stained with the faint ghosts of diagrams erased months ago. Another holds a cork bulletin board with notices that nobody has read in weeks. Near the far corner stands an overhead projector. Not a digital projector. An overhead projector. A remarkable machine that somehow managed to feel futuristic and ancient at exactly the same time. Someone places a transparent plastic sheet onto the glass surface. A bright lamp beneath it shines upward. The image appears on a pull-down screen at the front of the room. The presenter writes directly on the plastic with special markers, occasionally smearing fresh ink with the side of a hand. Nobody seems bothered. This is simply how presentations work. The machine hums quietly, producing just enough warmth to make the room feel slightly more comfortable during winter and slightly less tolerable during summer. Beside it sits a carousel slide projector gathering dust. Some departments still use it. Most have moved on. Technology advances unevenly. Entire offices exist where one employee uses the latest software while another still depends upon handwritten notes and carbon paper. Progress rarely arrives all at once. People trickle into the room carrying notepads, binders, and coffee mugs. There is always one person who apologizes for being late despite arriving only 30 seconds after everyone else. There is another who has somehow forgotten a pen. Again. There is someone who has clearly attended so many meetings that they can arrange papers with almost ceremonial precision before the discussion even begins. Veterans possess remarkable efficiency. Not because they enjoy meetings. Because they've survived thousands of them. Your manager begins. Let's get started. Those 4 words launch one of corporate America's oldest traditions. The meeting begins with introductions despite everyone knowing each other perfectly well. Then comes a brief review of the agenda. Then a discussion about whether the agenda should be changed. Then a discussion about something not actually on the agenda. Only after 15 minutes does anyone mention the reason everyone gathered in the first place. As if that could ever go wrong. Of course, not every meeting is unnecessary. Some genuinely solve problems. Some create ideas. Some prevent expensive mistakes. But the culture surrounding meetings in the 1990s often reflected something deeper than productivity. Meetings demonstrated organization, planning, management. They reassured everyone that decisions were being made carefully. Whether careful decisions always required 14 people sitting around polished oak furniture. Well, reasonable historians may disagree. You notice something else. Nobody is distracted by a smartphone. There are none. Nobody secretly checks social media beneath the table. Nobody replies to text messages. The only interruptions come from actual people. A telephone occasionally rings in someone's office down the hallway. A secretary quietly opens the door to deliver an urgent message. Someone excuses themselves to return an important phone call. Otherwise, everyone remains present. Sometimes attentively. Sometimes only physically. The art of appearing deeply interested while thinking about tonight's dinner existed long before smartphones arrived. Human beings have always possessed vivid internal worlds. Meetings simply provided excellent opportunities to visit them. One employee doodles absent-mindedly across a legal pad. Perfect little squares. Flowers. Abstract shapes. Another flips through previous meeting notes searching for information that may or may not exist. Someone else nods thoughtfully every few minutes. Not because they necessarily agree. Because nodding encourages meetings to move forward. Corporate anthropology contains many fascinating customs. The thoughtful nod deserves its own chapter. Eventually someone stands to explain quarterly numbers. Colored charts appear. Blue bars. Red lines. Pie charts whose slices seem determined to represent every possible budget category. PowerPoint exists now, but many companies still rely heavily upon printed handouts. Every attendee receives identical copies. Paper shuffles softly around the room. You glance through your packet. Graphs. Tables. Financial summaries. Everything printed on bright white paper with crisp black ink. The smell of freshly photocopied documents still lingers. That smell deserves remembering. Modern laser printers produce almost no scent. Older copiers filled rooms with a faint aroma of heated toner and warm paper. Employees associated it with deadlines. Reports. Preparation. Business itself somehow smelled faintly of photocopy machines. Halfway through the meeting, coffee begins disappearing. Mugs empty one by one. Someone quietly slips out to refill theirs. Nobody objects. Coffee enjoys diplomatic immunity within office culture. Then comes one of the meeting's oldest traditions. The question that changes everything. Any thoughts? Silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Professional silence. Everyone waits. Someone should probably speak. Nobody particularly wants to. Finally, one brave soul offers a suggestion. Discussion begins again. Ideas bounce politely around the room. Some survive. Others quietly disappear. Good managers encourage disagreement without encouraging hostility. Not always successfully. Every office develops personalities. There is the optimist. Every proposal sounds exciting. There is the skeptic. Every proposal contains hidden dangers. There is the storyteller who somehow answers every simple question with a 10-minute anecdote beginning in 1987. There is the practical employee who gently interrupts. So, what do we actually need to do? Bless that person. Every meeting needs one. The hierarchy inside conference rooms fascinates historians because it reveals unspoken rules. Where people sit often matters. Executives claim the ends of the table almost automatically. Managers gather nearby. Junior employees occupy the sides. Visitors take whichever seats remain. Nobody assigns these places. Everyone somehow understands. Like birds arranging themselves on telephone wires. Corporate instinct. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, ordinary office life continues. Telephones continue ringing. Printers continue printing. Receptionists continue greeting visitors. Someone battles the copier. Someone discovers the coffee pot is empty. Someone else quietly refills it without expecting applause. Invisible acts keep every workplace alive. Inside the meeting, however, another invisible system is at work. Decision-making. The 1990s represented a fascinating period because many American companies were becoming larger than ever before. Mergers created enormous corporations. Departments expanded. Layers of management multiplied. Information traveled upward. Instructions traveled downward. Sometimes rather slowly. An idea from an employee might climb 5 levels before reaching an executive. A decision might descend those same 5 levels before implementation. This process required meetings. Lots of meetings. Corporate America loved structure. Structure created consistency. Consistency created predictability. Predictability pleased shareholders. At least in theory. Sometimes structure also created wonderfully absurd moments. A committee might meet to discuss another committee's recommendations before scheduling a future meeting to finalize plans for the next discussion. Nobody intended this. It simply happened. Organizations develop habits just as individuals do. Some habits prove useful. Others become traditions long after everyone forgets why they began. Around 11:30, the meeting finally approaches its conclusion. Action items are assigned. Notes are gathered. Someone promises to circle back, though that particular phrase has not yet become the corporate cliché it will eventually become. People stand. Stretch. Collect coffee mugs. Chairs roll backward across thin industrial carpet. The conference room empties. Within minutes it returns to silence. Waiting patiently for the next gathering. Back at your cubicle, sunlight has shifted across the parking lot outside. You notice because a narrow beam now slips through the blinds, briefly overpowering the fluorescent lights. For a few precious minutes, natural light reaches your desk. It feels strangely luxurious. Then a cloud passes. The fluorescent kingdom quietly resumes control. The afternoon awaits. There are reports to finish. Phone calls to return. Letters to mail. Perhaps a fax to send. And somewhere down the hallway, someone from Human Resources is preparing another orientation session for next week's new employee. Because offices, much like small towns, are constantly renewing themselves. People arrive. People leave. Promotions happen. Retirements quietly unfold. Desks change occupants. Nameplates change. Yet the rhythm remains astonishingly constant. One generation trains the next. The photocopier still jams. The coffee still burns after sitting too long. And beneath the soft hum of fluorescent lights, millions of ordinary Americans continue living lives that history books rarely mention. Even though they quietly built the modern corporate world one meeting, one memo, and one carefully filed document at a time. The language of paper, memos, filing cabinets, and the great mountain of office documents. By the middle of your first month, you begin to understand a truth that no orientation video ever mentions. The office does not truly run on electricity, or coffee, or even computers. It runs on paper. Endless, magnificent, unstoppable paper. Every day, fresh stacks appear as if the building itself quietly manufactures documents overnight. White sheets glide from laser printers. Green and white computer paper arrives from accounting. Faxes curl gently into receiving trays. Envelopes appear in the incoming mail. Reports emerge from conference rooms. Forms migrate from desk to desk with mysterious determination. If archaeologists had excavated a typical American office in 1996, they might reasonably conclude that paper was the dominant life form. And, in many ways, they would be correct. Your morning begins with the arrival of the internal mail cart. Unlike the cheerful mail carrier who delivers letters to your home, the office mail clerk moves through the hallways with practiced efficiency, pushing a sturdy metal cart loaded with envelopes, folders, magazines, company newsletters, and interoffice mail. The sound becomes familiar. Tiny wheels rolling across industrial carpet. Metal gently rattling. The occasional squeak that no amount of maintenance ever seems able to eliminate. You hear it before you see it. Morning. Morning. The exchange lasts only a few seconds. Yet after weeks, perhaps months, you realize you've greeted this person more consistently than some distant relatives. The office creates its own little neighborhood. You sort through today's delivery. A supplier's invoice. A company newsletter featuring smiling employees posing beside a newly installed machine. A memo announcing changes to the health insurance plan. Another memo reminding everyone not to leave confidential documents unattended near the copier. Someone clearly has. Again. Then there's the interoffice envelope. Every office had them. Large manila envelopes with little boxes printed across the front. Each box contained handwritten names crossed out one after another. Marketing. Accounting. Purchasing. Human resources. Legal. The envelope itself had traveled around the building so many times that it looked older than some of the employees carrying it. Instead of throwing it away, people simply crossed out one recipient and added another. The envelope became a tiny traveler, wandering the corporate landscape until eventually no blank spaces remained. Only then was it retired. It had earned its rest. You open the envelope carefully. Inside rests a report that someone needs you to review. Not edit. Not approve. Simply review. That one word can mean almost anything. Perhaps someone genuinely wants your opinion. Perhaps they merely need another signature. Perhaps they simply want proof that someone else has looked at it before responsibility quietly shifts elsewhere. Corporate language possesses remarkable flexibility. Soon you'll become fluent. Let's revisit this. Translation: nothing is happening today. We'll keep this on the table. Translation: nobody wants to make the decision. Interesting idea. Translation: absolutely not. Let's discuss it further. Translation: maybe next quarter. Language softens reality. Always has. Always will. Your desk slowly disappears beneath growing piles of paper. One stack needs filing. Another requires signatures. A third contains documents you should probably read but somehow never quite find time for. Experienced employees develop systems. Not always logical systems. Personal systems. This pile is urgent. That pile is waiting. The pile near the phone reminds me to call someone. And the one beside the monitor. Well, nobody remembers what that one is for anymore. But moving it would feel dangerous somehow. So it stays. Historians often imagine ancient scribes surrounded by scrolls. Medieval monks copying manuscripts by candlelight. Victorian clerks filling enormous ledgers. In truth, the American office worker of the 1990s belonged to that same ancient tradition. Human civilization has always depended upon people patiently recording information. The tools changed. The responsibility did not. You stand and walk toward the filing room. Every department has one. A surprisingly quiet space lined with towering metal cabinets. Gray. Always gray. Thousands upon thousands of folders sleep inside narrow drawers. Each labeled carefully. Invoices. Contracts. Employee records. Tax documents. Customer files. Insurance claims. Purchase orders. The accumulated memory of an entire business. Opening one of these drawers requires genuine effort. The steel rails slide outward with a heavy metallic sound. Inside hangs a forest of manila folders, each suspended neatly from metal bars. Their tabs create perfect rows. Alphabetized. Usually. Until someone misfiles one. Then chaos quietly begins. Finding a misplaced file can become an expedition worthy of a historical documentary in its own right. You know the document exists. Someone saw it yesterday. Someone else signed it. Yet today. Gone. The search begins politely. Nearby drawers. Neighboring folders. Perhaps someone borrowed it. Then the search expands. Different departments. Storage rooms. Boxes in the basement. People begin asking one another. Have you seen the Henderson contract? No. What about Susan? Already asked. Accounting? They don't have it. Hours pass. Eventually someone discovers the missing folder exactly where it should have been all along. Except it had somehow slipped behind another folder. Hidden in plain sight. The relief spreads through the office like sunshine breaking through clouds. Nobody celebrates. But everyone quietly exhales. Because lost paperwork possesses an extraordinary ability to increase everyone's blood pressure. As you return to your desk, you notice another everyday ritual. The signature. Before electronic approvals existed, signatures ruled the office. Blue ink. Sometimes black. Never pencil. Almost every important document required someone's handwritten approval. Some signatures were elegant. Flowing. Artistic. Others resembled tiny earthquakes recorded on paper. After years of signing hundreds of documents every week, many executives developed signatures that looked less like names and more like abstract modern art. Yet everyone recognized them instantly. That's Mr. Johnson's signature. How can you tell? I've seen it for 12 years. Experience teaches remarkable things. Your manager appears carrying another folder. This needs to go upstairs. Upstairs. The executive floor. The phrase alone carries a certain weight. Upper management occupies a different world. Not necessarily better. Simply different. Quieter hallways. Larger offices. More windows. Better coffee, if office rumors are to be believed. No one can confirm this with complete certainty. The executive coffee remains one of corporate America's enduring legends. Some insist it tastes identical. Others swear it comes from an entirely different universe. You'll probably never know. You take the elevator carrying the folder. Unlike today's keycard-protected executive suites, many offices remain surprisingly open. Secretaries greet you warmly. Executive assistants coordinate impossible schedules with astonishing calm. Telephones ring constantly. Calendars overflow. Visitors wait patiently on upholstered chairs reading business magazines already several weeks old. The assistant accepts your folder. Thanks. He'll see it this afternoon. That's all. Mission accomplished. You ride the elevator back down feeling oddly satisfied. Sometimes work consists simply of moving information from one person to another. History often celebrates dramatic moments. Battles. Speeches. Discoveries. Yet civilization survives because millions of ordinary people quietly transport documents, answer telephones, and keep records accurate. The office reminds you of that every day. After lunch, another important visitor arrives. The office supply delivery. Few modern workers experience the quiet excitement once generated by fresh office supplies. Boxes appear. Paper. Pens. Legal pads. Folders. Staples. Highlighters. Fresh sticky notes still perfectly stacked. Someone opens a new box of ballpoint pens. The plastic crackles. Everyone somehow notices. Brand new office supplies possess a peculiar magic. The pens write smoothly. The markers smell faintly of possibility. The stapler hasn't jammed. Yet. There is almost childlike happiness in receiving fresh supplies. Perhaps because they promise order. A clean notebook suggests organized thoughts. An empty folder suggests work neatly completed. Reality eventually catches up. But for a little while, anything seems possible. Mid-afternoon arrives. Sunlight now falls across only one corner of the office. The rest remains beneath the unwavering glow of fluorescent tubes. Outside, seasons continue changing. Leaves begin falling. Rain comes and goes. Snow eventually arrives. Inside, time feels strangely suspended. The office exists within its own climate. Its own rhythm. Its own little universe. You glance around your cubicle. The stacks of paper no longer intimidate you. You know where everything belongs. Mostly. You know which forms require 3 copies. Which departments insist on blue ink? Which filing cabinets always stick during humid weather? You've begun speaking the quiet language of office life. Not because anyone formally taught you. Because routine is one of humanity's greatest teachers. Tomorrow morning, another mail cart will arrive. Another memo will appear. Another folder will need filing. Another report will require careful reading. And somewhere, deep within one of those towering gray filing cabinets, millions of sheets of paper will continue waiting patiently. Holding the memory of an entire company. One carefully labeled folder at a time. Coffee breaks, lunch hours, and the little society inside the office. By the time you've worked in the office for a few months, you begin to notice something that outsiders rarely see. The actual work, the reports, the phone calls, the spreadsheets, the endless forms, is only half of office life. The other half happens between those things. It happens while waiting for coffee to finish brewing. It happens in hallways. It happens beside the copier. It happens during lunch. History often focuses on grand decisions made in boardrooms. But everyday office culture lived somewhere much smaller. Usually beside the coffee pot. Around 9:30 every morning, almost without anyone announcing it, the first migration begins. One employee stands. Then another. A chair rolls backward. Someone stretches dramatically after staring at a computer monitor for an hour. Within minutes, a quiet procession heads toward the break room. Nobody schedules this. Nobody sends invitations. It simply happens. Like birds gathering on telephone wires at sunset. The break room itself is hardly luxurious. White walls. A vending machine humming quietly in the corner. A refrigerator decorated with magnets from insurance companies and local restaurants. A microwave that has already survived countless reheated lunches. A sink with a faucet that always seems to drip, no matter how many times maintenance repairs it. Several round tables sit beneath fluorescent lights, each surrounded by mismatched chairs that somehow came from different decades. One chair wobbles. Everyone knows which one. Visitors do not. You learn quickly. In one corner stands the coffee station. Perhaps the single most important piece of infrastructure in the entire building. The coffee maker is industrial-sized. Large enough to serve dozens of people. The glass pot rests on a warming plate that has two settings. Hot. And surface of the sun. Someone has already brewed the first pot before 8 o'clock. By now, the coffee has been sitting there for more than an hour. Opinions differ. Some employees insist fresh coffee should always be brewed. Others proudly claim that coffee reaches its perfect flavor after simmering for exactly 97 minutes. Science has never fully investigated this remarkable theory. Perhaps wisely. You pour yourself a cup. Steam rises gently. The aroma fills the room. Coffee in the office serves many purposes. It wakes people up. It provides an excuse to stand. It creates conversations. Most importantly, it gives everyone somewhere to gather without appearing unproductive. No manager ever questions someone getting coffee. Even if that journey somehow lasted 15 minutes. Because everyone understood. Sometimes people needed caffeine. Sometimes they simply needed another human being. The conversations begin almost immediately. Nothing dramatic. Nothing particularly important. Weekend plans. The weather. Last night's baseball game. Someone's daughter's piano recital. Someone else's dog that somehow learned to open the refrigerator. Tiny pieces of ordinary life. Modern workplaces often communicate through chat applications and video calls. The 1990s office communicated through proximity. You happened to stand beside someone while pouring coffee. Conversation followed naturally. No calendar invitation required. No notification. Just people sharing a few minutes together. You notice that certain groups naturally form. Accounting often gathers together. Salespeople arrive in energetic bursts before disappearing onto the road again. Information technology usually enters carrying expressions suggesting they've already solved 3 emergencies before breakfast. The IT department develops its own unique sense of humor. After enough years fixing computers, humor becomes a survival mechanism. Someone inevitably asks, "So, how's your morning?" One technician smiles wearily. Nobody's deleted anything important. A pause. Yet, everyone laughs. Because everyone understands exactly what that means. The office contains unofficial experts. Not managers. Not executives. Simply people who know things. Linda from payroll remembers everyone's employee number. Frank in maintenance can repair almost anything with a screwdriver and remarkable optimism. Susan knows every company policy ever written. Bob somehow remembers where documents from 1989 are stored. These people become living libraries. Entire departments quietly depend upon them. Retirement becomes almost frightening. Not because the company loses an employee. Because it loses decades of memory. Around 11:30, another subtle transformation begins. Lunch enters everyone's thoughts. The office refrigerator starts opening more frequently. Plastic containers appear. Brown paper bags emerge from desk drawers. Someone asks, "Who's going out?" Restaurants near office parks quietly built their business around this daily ritual. Delis. Chinese restaurants, pizza places, sandwich shops, small diners where waitresses recognized regular customers before they even sat down. The usual. No menus required. Some employees packed lunches every day. Peanut butter sandwiches, leftover pasta, homemade soup in thermoses, fruit carefully wrapped in paper towels. Others considered lunch an adventure. Every Tuesday became taco day. Every Friday, pizza. Certain traditions survived for years, sometimes decades. Lunch groups became little communities. Not everyone belonged to the same one. There were personalities. The sports group. The movie enthusiasts. The parents discussing children. The young employees exploring every new restaurant nearby. The quiet individuals who preferred reading alone with a sandwich. Every choice was perfectly acceptable. The office rarely forced friendship. It simply provided opportunities for it. Today, many people eat lunch while scrolling endlessly through phones. In the mid-1990s, entertainment looked different. Someone unfolded a newspaper. The sports section quickly disappeared. Another employee worked through a crossword puzzle. A few people played cards. Some simply watched rain falling outside enormous windows. Conversation filled the remaining silence. Stories wandered naturally. One person mentioned a vacation. Another remembered a similar trip years earlier. A discussion about weather somehow transformed into childhood memories of snowstorms. Nobody planned these conversations. They simply happened. Lunch lasted about an hour in many offices. An actual hour. People left the building. Walked outside. Sat in parks. Ran errands. Visited banks. Picked up dry cleaning. Life still existed during the workday. The boundary between work and personal time remained surprisingly solid. When lunch ended, people returned. When 5 o'clock arrived, most work stopped. Not because everyone lacked ambition. Because the office itself became inaccessible. The files stayed behind. The desktop computer stayed behind. The telephone stayed behind. You physically left work at work. An idea that now feels almost luxurious. Around 2 o'clock, the office experienced its quietest period. Lunch was over. Morning energy had faded. The afternoon still stretched ahead. This was the hour of concentration. Keyboards clicked steadily. Telephones rang less frequently. Sunlight drifted lazily across cubicle walls. Somewhere, a laser printer hummed continuously. Someone yawned. Someone refilled coffee for what they firmly described as the final cup of the day. It rarely was. Then came birthdays. Every office celebrated birthdays differently. Some brought cake. Others collected money for gifts. A few simply signed oversized greeting cards that somehow always appeared without anyone seeing who purchased them. Cake transformed the office. Even the busiest managers suddenly discovered 5 spare minutes. People gathered. Candles occasionally appeared. Plastic forks vanished mysteriously. For a brief moment, deadlines paused. Everyone became simply people. Not departments. Not job titles. Just co-workers sharing chocolate cake beneath fluorescent lights. The cake itself often came from the grocery store bakery. White frosting. Bright colored flowers made from icing. Someone always cut slices much larger than intended. Nobody complained. There was also the mysterious phenomenon of office candy. Every workplace had at least one desk containing candy. Peppermints. Chocolate kisses. Hard candies. Nobody officially appointed this person. They simply became the candy desk. Visitors stopped by regularly. Sometimes for candy. Sometimes for conversation disguised as candy. An astonishing amount of informal communication happened because someone wanted a peppermint. Humans are wonderfully creative social creatures. By late afternoon, around 4 o'clock, the atmosphere subtly changed again. People began wrapping up tasks. Filing papers. Returning phone calls. Writing tomorrow's to-do list on yellow legal pads. Many employees ended each day exactly the same way. A handwritten list. 3 tasks. 5 tasks. Maybe 10. Prepared for tomorrow. Computers remembered data. Paper remembered intentions. Outside, the parking lot slowly filled with long shadows. Inside, sunlight reached farther across the carpet than it had all day. Golden afternoon light mixed with cold fluorescent white. For a few precious minutes, the office almost looked beautiful. Not because the furniture changed. Because sunlight forgives almost everything. You pause for a moment and look around. People are working quietly. Someone laughs across the room. A telephone rings one final time. The copier finishes another report. The coffee pot is almost empty now. These sounds would have seemed ordinary to everyone living through them. History rarely announces itself. No one sitting in that break room in 1995 imagined that within little more than a decade, smartphones, wireless internet, instant messaging, cloud computing, and video meetings would completely transform almost every one of these daily rituals. At that moment, this simply felt like work. Comfortably predictable. Occasionally frustrating. Sometimes boring. Yet deeply human. Tomorrow morning, everyone will return. The same parking spaces. The same coffee maker. The same cubicles. The same familiar faces. Because routine, perhaps more than excitement, quietly shapes most human lives. And nowhere was routine more carefully practiced than inside a 1990s American office, where millions of ordinary people built friendships, careers, and memories one coffee break at a time. The digital frontier arrives one beige computer at a time. By the mid-1990s, something unusual was happening inside American offices. It wasn't dramatic. There were no explosions of innovation that instantly transformed the workplace overnight. No employee arrived one Monday morning to discover robots delivering coffee or holograms floating above conference tables. Instead, change arrived quietly. One computer. One software update. One unfamiliar icon on the desktop. One nervous conversation between coworkers. History often remembers revolutions as loud events. In reality, many of the most significant changes begin so slowly that almost nobody notices them while they're happening. The digital revolution inside the American office was exactly that kind of change. Imagine arriving at work in 1996. The parking lot looks exactly as it did last year. The coffee still tastes optimistic. The fluorescent lights still hum with unwavering dedication. Bob's chair still squeaks. Nothing appears different. Until you sit down at your computer. There's something new. Perhaps a fresh version of Microsoft Office has been installed over the weekend. Maybe your company has upgraded from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95. Maybe information technology has quietly replaced your aging monitor with one that displays slightly more colors. Not dramatically more. Just enough to make everyone gather around and say, "Wow." Technology advanced in careful little steps. Each improvement felt enormous. Each upgrade required adjustment. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Many employees had spent years mastering existing systems. Their fingers knew exactly where commands lived. Their routines had become second nature. Then someone announced, "We're switching software." Silence. The kind of silence usually reserved for unpleasant medical diagnoses. Training sessions followed. Conference rooms filled with employees learning unfamiliar menus. New keyboard shortcuts. New ways of saving files. Someone inevitably asked, "Why are we changing?" The instructor smiled politely. "Because it's better." Whether everyone agreed remained another matter. Human beings possess an extraordinary talent for adapting. We also possess an equally extraordinary talent for complaining while adapting. Both skills often develop simultaneously. You begin hearing a new phrase around the office. Email. Not everyone uses it yet. Some departments rely heavily upon it. Others barely acknowledge its existence. It feels strangely experimental. The concept seems almost unbelievable. You type a message. Press a button. Moments later, someone in another office receives it. No envelope. No stamp. No fax machine. No interoffice mail. Just words traveling invisibly through wires. Many employees remain skeptical. What if they don't check it? A reasonable concern. In 1996, checking email was not yet a constant reflex. Some people looked once in the morning. Again after lunch. Perhaps once before going home. There were no notifications chiming every few seconds. No vibrating pockets. No overwhelming inbox containing hundreds of unread messages. Email still felt like another useful tool. Not yet the center of working life. This meant people continued walking to one another's desks. A question still involved an actual conversation. A document still changed hands physically. Technology assisted communication. It had not yet replaced it. Then came the internet. Or rather, the rumor of the internet. People spoke about it with cautious curiosity. My son says everyone's going to use it. My neighbor bought a modem. I heard you can read newspapers from Australia. Imagine explaining that to someone only 20 years earlier. Newspapers. From Australia. Appearing on your computer. Without airplanes. Without ships. Without waiting weeks. Magic dressed itself as technology. Of course, accessing the internet in many offices wasn't quite so magical. The modem announced its presence loudly. A series of strange electronic chirps. Buzzes. Clicks. High-pitched whistles. Almost like two tiny robots arguing through a telephone line. Everyone who lived through the era remembers the sound. It wasn't merely noise. It was anticipation. If the connection succeeded, a new world quietly opened. If it failed, well, you listened to the entire symphony again. Patiently. Or not so patiently. The internet itself felt surprisingly empty compared to today. Simple web pages. Mostly text. Small images that loaded one line at a time. Watching a photograph appear gradually from top to bottom required genuine patience. Nobody expected instant loading. Everyone understood computers needed time. Waiting wasn't failure. Waiting was simply part of using technology. Some companies cautiously built their first websites. Marketing departments suddenly discovered unfamiliar responsibilities. Executives attended seminars explaining why every business should establish an online presence. Many remained unconvinced. Do our customers even use computers? An entirely reasonable question in 1995. The answer depended greatly upon the industry. Banks experimented carefully. Retailers watched closely. Newspapers worried quietly. Nobody could quite predict what came next. Inside the office, however, another transformation was taking place. The paper mountain began shrinking. Not disappearing. Never disappearing. But shrinking. Documents that once required 6 printed copies now required only 3. Drafts circulated electronically before anyone touched a printer. Spreadsheets moved across networks instead of hallways. File cabinets still filled entire rooms. Yet they no longer expanded quite as quickly. Information slowly lost weight. It became easier to duplicate. Harder to organize. Folders inside computers introduced entirely new challenges. Physical filing had obvious rules. Everything occupied one place. Digital files could vanish into dozens of directories with astonishing speed. Employees developed peculiar naming systems. Report. Final report. Final report new. Final report final. Final report final version. Final report final version 2. Human nature adapts remarkably little regardless of technology. Some traditions simply refuse to disappear. Passwords became another fascinating challenge. Computer security existed long before cybercrime dominated headlines. Employees wrote passwords on sticky notes. Then attached those sticky notes directly to computer monitors. Information technology politely requested they stop doing that. Many promised they would. Some actually did. Others simply hid the sticky note beneath the keyboard. Progress. Around this time, office jargon also began changing. New vocabulary quietly entered daily conversation. Download. Upload. Network. Server. Browser. Homepage. Website. Firewall. Words that once sounded deeply technical gradually became ordinary. Language evolved alongside machines. Meanwhile, the IT department grew busier than ever. They installed software. Configured printers. Connected computers to local networks. Explained why turning the monitor off did not actually shut down the computer. Again. Their offices filled with spare keyboards. Network cables. Computer parts. Instruction manuals thicker than telephone books. Many technicians genuinely loved solving problems. Others simply accepted that troubleshooting had become a permanent condition of employment. One afternoon your computer freezes. The mouse refuses to move. The keyboard becomes unresponsive. You stare hopefully at the screen. Perhaps it will recover. It does not. You sigh quietly. Then call IT. The technician arrives carrying a toolkit and remarkable calm. What happened? It just froze. The technician nods thoughtfully. As though computers occasionally doing inexplicable things remains one of life's unavoidable mysteries. Which, to be fair, it often is. After a few minutes, everything works again. You thank them. They smile. Then continue toward another cubicle where another employee has somehow managed to print 76 copies of the same document. Technology keeps everyone employed in unexpected ways. By late afternoon, you realize something subtle. The office no longer feels entirely like the one you joined. Not because the furniture changed. Because the future has quietly taken a seat beside every desk. The computers are becoming more capable every month. The internet grows larger every week. Email becomes more common every day. Nobody knows exactly where these changes will lead. Some imagine a faster office. Others imagine a paperless office. A few imagine people eventually working from home using computers connected through telephone lines. Most laugh politely at that last idea. Working from home? Regularly? Surely not. People need offices. Managers need to see employees. Meetings require conference rooms. Work belongs in the workplace. At least, that's what almost everyone believes in 1996. History has a delightful habit of surprising confident people. For now, however, the cubicles remain full. The fax machine still sings. The filing cabinet still groan beneath decades of paperwork. Coffee continues flowing through the break room. Outside, the sun begins slipping lower toward the horizon, casting long golden reflections across rows of parked cars. Inside, monitors glow softly against gray cubicle walls. Thousands of tiny electronic cursors blink patiently, waiting for the next sentence. Waiting for the next spreadsheet. Waiting for tomorrow. Without realizing it, the people sitting beneath those humming fluorescent lights are helping build the modern workplace. One quiet click of a mouse at a time. Dress codes, office fashion, and the curious art of looking professional. By the time you have settled comfortably into office life, there is one ritual you barely think about anymore. Getting dressed for work. It begins every weekday morning before sunrise, standing in front of a closet that somehow contains plenty of clothes and absolutely nothing to wear. This problem, historians are pleased to report, has remained remarkably consistent throughout human civilization. The Romans complained about clothing. Victorians complained about clothing. Office workers in 1995 complained about clothing. Some traditions are eternal. Unlike today's workplaces, where hoodies and sneakers might be perfectly acceptable in many companies, the American office of the 1990s still believed strongly in the visual language of professionalism. What you wore mattered. Not necessarily because better clothing made someone more capable, but because appearance communicated seriousness. Or at least the appearance of seriousness. There is a difference. For many men, the morning uniform followed a familiar formula. Dress shirt. Pressed carefully, if possible. Tie. Slacks. Leather belt. Polished shoes. Sometimes a sports coat. Sometimes a full suit if meetings with clients filled the day's schedule. The tie held a peculiar place in office culture. It accomplished nothing practical. It kept no one warmer. It offered no protection against paper cuts. It certainly didn't improve typing speed. Yet somehow it became one of the defining symbols of professional adulthood. Thousands of men spent decades adjusting little knots beneath their collars every morning before leaving home. By lunchtime, many had loosened them ever so slightly. By 5 o'clock, the tie had usually surrendered completely. Women navigated a different set of expectations. Professional dresses. Blouses. Skirts. Slacks, increasingly common throughout the decade. Blazers. Comfortable enough for long meetings. Formal enough for clients. Stylish enough without appearing overly fashionable. The balance could be surprisingly complicated. Fashion magazines devoted entire articles to the modern business wardrobe. Human resources occasionally distributed dress code reminders. Most employees simply watched what everyone else wore and quietly followed along. Office fashion functioned almost like camouflage. Standing out too much rarely felt comfortable. Looking completely out of place invited unwanted attention. So most people occupied a comfortable middle ground. Professional. Predictable. Entirely appropriate. The colors reflected the office itself. Navy blue. Gray. Black. Brown. Cream. White. Muted greens. The occasional burgundy. The office and its employees gradually began resembling one another. Subtle. Calm. Purposefully restrained. Bright neon belonged to weekend life. Monday morning preferred beige. Of course it did. Shoes deserve their own chapter. Office workers spent astonishing amounts of time thinking about shoes. Not because anyone admired them. Because everyone had to walk in them all day. Hallways stretched endlessly. Meetings happened on different floors. The parking lot alone sometimes required several minutes of walking. Comfort slowly defeated vanity. Many learned this lesson the difficult way. Friday brought small freedoms. Some companies introduced Casual Friday. The idea sounded almost revolutionary. Employees could leave their ties at home. Perhaps wear khakis instead of dress pants. Maybe even jeans. Well, nice jeans. Dark jeans. Respectable jeans. Nobody was entirely sure where the boundaries existed. Casual Friday often produced widespread uncertainty. People stood before mirrors wondering, is this casual? What about this? Is this too casual? Managers quietly wondered the same thing. The first few Casual Fridays resembled a fascinating social experiment. One employee appeared in a polo shirt. Another remained fully suited because they didn't trust the concept. Someone wore colorful sneakers. The vice president arrived wearing exactly the same clothing as every other day. Nobody wished to be remembered as the person who misunderstood Casual Friday. Eventually everyone relaxed. Mostly. Clothing reflected hierarchy in subtle ways. Executives often wore more expensive suits. Better watches. Higher quality leather briefcases. Not always. Some senior managers dressed surprisingly simply. Some junior employees spent remarkable amounts trying to appear successful. Appearances occasionally misled. The quiet man in a modest jacket might own half the company. The sharply dressed newcomer might still be learning where the supply closet was. The office taught people not to judge too quickly. Hair also carried the unmistakable signature of the decade. The early 1990s retained echoes of the larger hairstyles from the 1980s. As the decade progressed, styles softened. Business cuts became slightly more relaxed. Yet professionalism remained the guiding principle. No manager ever complimented someone by saying, "You look ready for a rock concert." Unless the office happened to be inside the music industry. Even then. Probably not. Perfume and cologne introduced another quiet chapter of office etiquette. Most people wore a little. Some wore rather more than a little. By 10 o'clock each morning, the combined aromas of aftershave, perfume, fresh coffee, copier toner, and industrial carpet cleaner created a scent unique to office buildings everywhere. It wasn't unpleasant. Merely distinctive. If memory itself had a fragrance, many former office workers would recognize it instantly. Somewhere in the distance, a photocopier warms another stack of paper. Someone sprays air freshener in the restroom. The coffee pot finishes another cycle. History often lives inside smells more than photographs. Around mid-morning, jackets begin disappearing. Not because professionalism has ended. Because offices possess curious temperatures. Some departments resemble tropical rainforests. Others feel like refrigerated warehouses. No thermostat has ever successfully satisfied everyone. Some employees wear sweaters year-round. Others quietly operate small desk fans. Tiny battles over office temperature become legendary. Who turned the air conditioning down? It wasn't me. It had to be someone. No culprit is ever identified. The mystery survives another season. Then there are accessories. Eyeglasses become increasingly common as employees spend longer hours before computer monitors. Reading glasses rest beside keyboards. Pocket calculators remain clipped to belts. Pagers hang discreetly from waistbands for employees who must remain reachable outside the office. The pager occupies an interesting place in history. It offers connection. But only halfway. A tiny beep. A phone number appears. You must still find a telephone. There is no replying instantly. Urgency exists. Immediacy does not. Looking back, it feels almost civilized. Briefcases remain everywhere. Soft leather. Hard-sided cases. Expandable fabric bags with countless compartments. Inside rests an entire portable office. Legal pads. Pens. Business cards. A calculator. Perhaps a newspaper folded neatly beside lunch. Today, many people carry laptops. In 1995, carrying a laptop required genuine commitment. Portable computers existed. Portable proved to be a flexible definition. Some weighed nearly as much as a small child. Battery life inspired cautious optimism rather than confidence. Most remained plugged into walls whenever possible. The office itself reflected these expectations. Coat racks filled every winter morning. Umbrellas dripped quietly near entrances. Receptionists somehow remembered whose overcoat belonged to whom. Even tiny routines developed naturally. Someone always polished shoes before an important presentation. Someone else kept an emergency tie in the bottom drawer after spilling coffee years earlier. Another employee maintained a sewing kit because loose buttons respected no calendar. Experience teaches preparation. Lunch brought another subtle transformation. Jackets hung over chair backs. Sleeves rolled upward. Top collar buttons quietly opened. For one brief hour, everyone relaxed into slightly more comfortable versions of themselves. Then, almost magically, at 1 o'clock, jackets returned. Ties straightened. Professional faces reappeared. The performance resumed. Not because anyone was pretending. Because human beings naturally adjust themselves to different settings. We speak differently at home than at weddings. Differently with children than supervisors. The office simply possessed its own language. Including the language of clothing. As afternoon sunlight stretches through the blinds, you glance around the sea of cubicles. Rows of navy jackets. White shirts. Muted dresses. Leather shoes disappearing beneath desks. The visual rhythm feels almost peaceful. Uniform without being identical. Individual without becoming distracting. Outside these walls, fashion changes every season. Inside, change arrives much more slowly. Professionalism values consistency. Predictability. Reliability. Tomorrow morning, millions of Americans will stand before closets once again, not another tie, button another shirt, polish another pair of shoes, and step into another ordinary workday. They won't imagine historians discussing their wardrobes decades later. They'll simply hope the coffee is fresh. The meetings are short. And perhaps, just perhaps, that today will finally be the day someone remembers to refill the copier with paper before it runs out. Hope, after all, has always been part of getting dressed for work. Deadlines, performance reviews, and climbing the corporate ladder. By the second year, something changes. Not in the office. The office looks almost exactly as it did on your first morning. The same gray cubicles. The same fluorescent lights humming with unwavering confidence. The same coffee pot that's somehow already half empty before 9 o'clock. The same photocopier that occasionally decides paper is an optional ingredient. No. The change happens inside you. You stop feeling like a newcomer. Without realizing it, you become part of the office itself. You know people's birthdays without checking the calendar. You know which vending machine occasionally gives away an extra candy bar. You know exactly how long it takes the elevator to reach the 5th floor. You recognize coworkers simply by the sound of their footsteps approaching your cubicle. Humans adapt to routines with astonishing speed. Eventually, even the extraordinary becomes ordinary. Your morning now unfolds almost automatically. Coffee. Computer. Voicemail. Calendar. Today's paperwork. The rhythm no longer requires conscious thought. Musicians call it muscle memory. Office workers simply call it Tuesday. The calendar on your desk has become surprisingly important. Not because it contains holidays. Because it contains deadlines. Deadlines ruled corporate America. They arrived quietly. Sometimes weeks away. Sometimes tomorrow morning. Occasionally. Yesterday. Deadlines possessed an unusual ability to reshape the atmosphere of an entire department. When one approached, conversations became shorter. Coffee consumption increased noticeably. Printers worked almost continuously. The photocopier suddenly developed a line stretching into the hallway. Nobody panicked exactly. They simply became purposeful. There is a distinct difference. A normal workday moves at a comfortable walking pace. Deadline week jogs. You discover that every office has its own annual cycle. Accounting transforms completely during tax season. Retail companies become almost unrecognizable before Christmas. Insurance offices brace themselves for renewal periods. Manufacturing firms race toward quarterly production goals. The calendar quietly controls everything. Employees speak about months almost the way farmers once discussed harvests. Things will calm down after September. We're always busy in March. Just make it to the end of the quarter. Time itself becomes divided into waves of activity. Between those waves lies something precious. Ordinary days. The office also begins teaching another lesson. Performance. Not dramatic performances. Professional ones. Eventually, everyone receives a performance review. Few events inspired quite the same mixture of anticipation and quiet anxiety. The meeting usually appears on your calendar several weeks in advance. Annual review. 2 words capable of occupying your thoughts for days. You begin remembering everything you've accomplished. You also remember every mistake. The spreadsheet with the wrong formula. The forgotten voicemail. The report submitted 20 minutes late. Human memory has always possessed a remarkable talent for replaying embarrassing moments at precisely the least helpful times. The day arrives. Your manager invites you into their office. An actual office. With walls. And perhaps a window. You sit across from the desk. A folder already waits. Inside are forms. There are always forms. Your manager smiles reassuringly. The conversation begins gently. You've had a good year. Relief arrives almost immediately. Not because you expect disaster. Because uncertainty weighs surprisingly heavily. The review continues. Strengths. Areas for improvement. Goals for next year. Professional development. The language remains careful. Constructive. Measured. Good managers understand something important. People remember how criticism feels far longer than they remember the exact words. Not every manager is good. Some rush through the process. Some genuinely mentor. Some treat reviews as paperwork. Others use them as opportunities to help careers grow. The experience varies enormously. One truth remains constant. Everyone leaves wondering whether they should have answered one question differently. Promotion enters your thoughts occasionally now. Not obsessively. Just quietly. You notice an empty office after someone retires. A supervisor transfers to another branch. A department expands. Possibilities appear. Corporate careers in the 1990s often resembled long staircases. People expected to stay with one company for years. Sometimes decades. Loyalty still carried considerable value. Job hopping existed, but less frequently than it would in later generations. Many employees genuinely believed they might retire from the same company where they had started. Sometimes they did. Sometimes the economy had other plans. The office develops invisible social rules around ambition. Working hard is respected. Showing off rarely is. Helping coworkers earns admiration. Taking credit for their work usually does not. People watch one another carefully. Reputations grow slowly. One generous act. One missed deadline. One successful project. One careless mistake. Over months and years, these moments accumulate into something larger than any annual review. A reputation. Once established, it becomes surprisingly difficult to change. Around this time, mentors begin appearing naturally. Rarely through official programs. Usually through ordinary conversations. An experienced employee notices your work. Offers advice. Explains how meetings really function. Teaches which battles deserve fighting. And which are best ignored. History often celebrates famous teachers. Most careers, however, are shaped by ordinary people who quietly take 10 minutes to help someone newer than themselves. Those moments rarely appear in company newsletters. Yet they matter enormously. Then comes office politics. A phrase spoken almost like bad weather. Nobody enjoys discussing it. Everyone acknowledges it exists. Office politics rarely resembles dramatic television shows. It's much quieter. Who receives information first? Who gets invited to meetings? Which departments cooperate easily? Which quietly compete for budgets? Most conflicts remain remarkably ordinary. Human beings working together inevitably produce misunderstandings. Sometimes personalities simply don't fit comfortably together. Two excellent employees may disagree constantly. Neither is wrong. They're simply different. Good offices learn to manage these differences. Poor offices allow them to grow. One afternoon, rumors begin spreading. Nothing dramatic. Just whispers. The company's reorganizing. Nobody knows exactly what that means. Reorganization became one of corporate America's favorite words. Sometimes it meant exciting opportunities. Sometimes new reporting structures. Sometimes layoffs. Nobody knew immediately. Rumors traveled faster than official announcements. Always have. Always will. The break room becomes unusually quiet. People speculate carefully. I heard marketing is expanding. My friend in accounting says they're merging departments. I don't think anyone really knows. Usually. Nobody does. Eventually, management calls a meeting. The truth proves less dramatic than the rumors. It often does. A few reporting lines change. Some desks move. A new department forms. Life continues. The office breathes again. These moments reveal something historians often overlook. Most workplaces spend remarkably little time in crisis. They spend most of their existence adapting. Small adjustments. Gradual improvements. Occasional frustrations. The headlines remember dramatic collapses. Employees mostly remember ordinary Tuesdays. Technology continues evolving in the background. Computers become slightly faster. Monitors slightly sharper. Email slightly more common. You notice fewer handwritten memos than before. The fax machine still works tirelessly. But now some documents arrive electronically first. The transition feels almost invisible. Looking back decades later, people imagine sudden technological revolutions. Living through them feels entirely different. One software update at a time. One new computer every few years. One unfamiliar feature everyone eventually learns. Progress rarely announces itself. It simply arrives. Late one afternoon, you remain at your desk after many coworkers have left. Not because anyone ordered overtime. Because you're determined to finish one report before tomorrow. The office feels different when it's nearly empty. Quieter. The constant ringing of telephones has faded. The photocopier rests peacefully. The fluorescent lights seem louder somehow. Outside the windows, the parking lot glows beneath orange evening light. Cleaning staff quietly begin their work. Vacuum cleaners hum in distant hallways. Trash bins empty one by one. These workers know the office from an entirely different perspective. They witness the workplace after everyone else has gone home. Every building has multiple lives depending on the hour. You save your document. Turn off the monitor. Gather your briefcase. As you walk toward the elevator, you glance back across rows of empty cubicles. Each desk tells a tiny story. Family photographs. Coffee mugs. Calendars. Plants. Sticky notes. Sweaters draped over chairs. Evidence of hundreds of ordinary lives temporarily paused until morning. Tomorrow, they'll all return. The conversations. The deadlines. The meetings. The laughter. The frustrations. The quiet satisfaction of solving problems that nobody outside this building will ever know existed. History usually remembers presidents, inventors, and generals. Yet the modern world was equally built by millions of office workers who spent their days balancing budgets, answering telephones, filing reports, and helping one another through another ordinary workweek. Their stories rarely filled history books. But together, they filled an era. The dot-com boom, corporate dreams, and the office at the edge of a new millennium. As the 1990s drift quietly toward their final years, something begins to change, not only inside your office, but across America itself. At first, it feels like little more than background noise. A magazine cover in the break room talks about the information superhighway. The evening news mentions companies with strange new names. Someone's nephew has left a perfectly respectable accounting job to work for a business that exists almost entirely on the internet. Everyone nods politely. Then someone asks the obvious question. So, what exactly do they sell? Silence. The answer, surprisingly often, is difficult to explain. The late 1990s are filled with possibilities. Possibilities are exciting. They are also wonderfully confusing. Inside your office, however, Monday morning still begins exactly as it always has. The coffee machine gurgles faithfully. The receptionist answers phones before most people have taken off their coats. Someone has already discovered that the copier is out of toner. Bob is still trying to convince everyone that his fantasy football team is somehow more important than quarterly sales figures. Some things remain reassuringly permanent. But beneath that familiar routine, optimism is beginning to spread. America's economy is growing. Companies are hiring. Office buildings seem to appear almost overnight along suburban highways. Entire business parks spring up where cornfields stood only a few years earlier. Glass towers reflect the morning sun like monuments to confidence itself. There is a feeling, not shared by everyone, but by many, that the future has arrived. And it looks profitable. Recruiters become busier. Job advertisements multiply. New graduates walk into offices with an optimism that borders on fearless. Many believe their careers will follow a simple path. Work hard. Earn promotions. Buy a house. Stay with one company for 30 years. Retire comfortably. History rarely unfolds quite so neatly. But in 1998, it seems entirely possible. You notice that younger employees bring different expectations. Some question long-established routines. Do we really need to print all these reports? An innocent question. One that quietly unsettles people who have spent decades carefully filing every document. Others suggest sending information by email instead of fax. The older employees raise understandable concerns. What if someone doesn't receive it? What if the system crashes? What if we lose everything? These aren't foolish questions. They're practical ones. Every generation worries that new technology might fail. Usually because, at least occasionally, it does. The office now contains a curious mixture of old and new. One desk still holds a typewriter used for specialized forms. Another features a brand new computer with speakers capable of playing surprisingly realistic sound. Someone carries a pager. Someone else has purchased one of those new mobile phones. It is about the size of a hardcover novel. Its battery lasts only a few hours. The monthly bill inspires quiet concern. Yet everyone wants to hold it. Just for a moment. Technology in the 1990s often worked like that. The newest gadget became the center of attention. Not because everyone intended to buy one. Because everyone wondered what the future might feel like in their hands. Meetings begin changing too. The overhead projector gradually disappears. PowerPoint presentations become more common. Projectors are wheeled into conference rooms on squeaky metal carts. Someone inevitably struggles with the cables. Another employee turns off the lights. The first slide appears. Everyone pauses. It feels modern. The animations are perhaps a little enthusiastic. Text flies dramatically onto the screen. Charts dissolve with theatrical flair. No one has yet discovered that fewer animations often make better presentations. That lesson will arrive later. For now, every transition effect deserves celebration. The office printer room grows quieter. Not silent. Never silent. But quieter. Some reports remain digital. Drafts circulate by email. Comments arrive electronically. The mountain of paper shrinks just a little more. Filing cabinets still dominate entire rooms. Yet you begin wondering whether future offices might need fewer of them. The thought seems almost impossible. Where else would companies keep their memories? Cloud storage has not yet entered ordinary conversation. Memory still occupies metal drawers. Friday afternoons remain wonderfully predictable. Energy softens. People finish loose ends. Someone brings donuts. Someone else announces they're leaving for another company. Farewell gatherings become surprisingly emotional. A cake appears. There is always cake. Someone signs a large greeting card. Coworkers share stories. Remember funny moments. Wish one another good luck. Office friendships often arrive quietly. No dramatic beginning. No dramatic declaration. Just years of shared mornings. Shared deadlines. Shared frustrations with malfunctioning printers. Then one day someone accepts another job. Only then do you realize how important they had become. The office teaches an unusual lesson. People spend thousands of hours together. Sometimes more waking hours than with their own families. Naturally, relationships form. Some remain professional. Others become lifelong friendships. A few even become marriages. Corporate America quietly introduces countless couples who might otherwise never have met. Human history has always found romance in unexpected places. Apparently, beside the photocopier is one of them. Outside the office, another phenomenon captures everyone's imagination. The stock market. News programs discuss rising prices almost every evening. Technology companies seem to double in value overnight. Employees begin checking financial pages during lunch. Retirement accounts suddenly become much more interesting. Conversations shift. Did you hear about that internet company? My broker says technology stocks are the future. I wish I'd invested earlier. Optimism spreads easily during prosperous times. It always has. Inside the office, however, ordinary work continues. Invoices still require approval. Customers still need assistance. Payroll must still be processed every Friday. History's grand economic stories rest upon millions of ordinary tasks completed correctly. No excitement in the stock market changes the fact that someone must answer the telephone. One afternoon, the information technology department announces another upgrade. New computers are arriving. The old machines, only a few years old, are already considered outdated. Employees gather around unopened cardboard boxes. The smell of new electronics fills the room. Monitors appear brighter. Processors faster. Hard drives astonishingly larger. 2 gigabytes. Someone whistles softly. What would anyone ever need that much space for? Future generations may smile at the question. At the time, it sounded perfectly reasonable. Software grows more sophisticated. The internet grows busier. Websites become colorful. Online shopping begins appearing in conversations. Some employees have ordered books through the internet. Others remain deeply suspicious. You gave your credit card number, online. The room falls silent. Such bravery. Or recklessness. Depending on whom you ask. As 1999 approaches, another curious anxiety quietly enters office life. Y2K. The year 2000 problem. Computers around the world may, or may not, malfunction when calendars change from 1999 to 2000. No one seems entirely certain. Experts appear on television. Newspapers publish lengthy explanations. IT departments everywhere become extraordinarily busy. Your office is no exception. Meetings multiply. Software updates are installed. Old systems are tested repeatedly. Backup tapes accumulate. Employees joke nervously. So, should we come to work on January 1st? Someone laughs. Someone else isn't entirely joking. The office spends months preparing for a disaster that most people hope never arrives. It becomes one of the great shared experiences of late 1990s corporate life. For a little while, everyone, from receptionists to chief executives, thinks about the same question. What happens when the calendar changes? No one knows for certain. Outside, winter evenings arrive early. Holiday decorations appear in reception areas. Small artificial trees stand beside elevators. Paper snowflakes decorate bulletin boards. Someone wears a festive tie. Another employee quietly places wrapped cookies in the break room for everyone. The office feels warmer somehow. Not because the heating has improved. Because traditions matter. Even inside buildings filled with computers and spreadsheets. As you leave one December evening in 1999, snow begins falling softly across the parking lot. Streetlights reflect against thousands of tiny white flakes. Employees scrape ice from windshields. Wish one another happy holidays. Promise to see each other after New Year's. Most believe that when they return, it will simply be another ordinary workday. In many ways, they're right. The office will still have coffee. Still have cubicles. Still have meetings. Still have Bob explaining fantasy football. But beneath those familiar routines, a new century waits quietly just beyond midnight. And with it, a workplace unlike anything these office workers could yet imagine. The last quiet years before everything changed. The calendar turns. January arrives. The year now begins with a 2 instead of a 1. For a brief moment, people pause. Not because the office has transformed overnight. It hasn't. The carpet is still the same dependable shade of gray. The fluorescent lights continue their endless, unwavering hum. The coffee machine is still brewing coffee that can best be described as enthusiastically average. And the copier, displaying remarkable consistency, has once again decided that paper jams are simply part of its personality. Life continues. History often tricks us into believing that centuries arrive with fireworks. Most of the time, they arrive on a Monday morning. Employees park in the same spaces they parked in last Friday. The receptionist says good morning. The elevators make the same familiar journey upward. Someone forgets their security badge. Someone else remembers they left their lunch at home. The world, despite all the dramatic headlines about the new millennium, feels remarkably ordinary. That, perhaps, is one of history's greatest lessons. People rarely realize they are living through the end of an era. Because endings seldom announce themselves. They simply become visible years later. The year 2000 problem, the famous Y2K scare, proved surprisingly uneventful for most offices. Months of preparation have paid off. Computer systems continue working. Payroll still runs. The phones still ring. The printers still print. There are a few isolated glitches around the world, but civilization stubbornly refuses to collapse. Some employees seem almost disappointed. After all those meetings, all those software updates, all those backup tapes. The office survives with little more than a collective shrug. Someone jokes that they prepared harder for Y2K than for college exams. Nobody disagrees. The joke spreads from cubicle to cubicle. Even managers laugh. It feels good to laugh together after months of uncertainty. Yet while Y2K quietly fades into memory, another transformation continues gathering speed. The Internet. Only a few years earlier it had been a curiosity. Now it is becoming unavoidable. Every department has an email address. Every company wants a website. Customers begin expecting faster responses. Some even ask whether forms can be downloaded online. The request sounds slightly futuristic. Soon it will become completely normal. Inside the office, habits evolve almost invisibly. People still speak face to face. But now they also send emails. Meetings still happen. But agendas arrive electronically beforehand. Reports are still printed. But fewer copies are needed. Paper has not disappeared. It has simply begun sharing space with pixels. Your desk reflects this transition. The filing tray is a little smaller. The monitor is a little larger. There are fewer sticky notes taped around the screen because digital calendars have quietly started taking over. Not completely. Just enough to notice. Some employees embrace every new tool with enthusiasm. Others remain loyal to paper planners. One executive continues carrying the same leather-bound appointment book year after year. He insists it has never crashed. No one can argue with that. The office develops an interesting split. Not between young and old exactly. Between the naturally curious and the comfortably familiar. Some people enjoy learning every new piece of software. Others quietly hope the next update never arrives. Neither group is wrong. Technology asks different things of different people. A Around this time, conversations begin changing in another subtle way. The idea of working from home occasionally appears. Not often. Usually after a snowstorm. Or when someone has a sick child. Managers consider it carefully. Can the work actually be done from home? The answer surprises many. Sometimes. Yes. A few employees connect to office computers through slow, noisy dial-up connections. The process feels almost miraculous. Files appear on home computers. Emails arrive. Documents can be edited without stepping into the building. It is inconvenient. Slow. Occasionally frustrating. But it works. Hardly anyone imagines this will one day become ordinary. The office itself still feels essential. Where else would everyone meet? Where would birthday cakes be shared? Where would new employees learn the unwritten rules? Where would friendships quietly grow over coffee? Physical workplaces seem permanent. History, once again, is preparing a surprise. But not yet. Not today. Today, someone from Human Resources walks through the office carrying a stack of envelopes. Annual benefit statements. Health insurance information. Retirement contributions. The paperwork never truly disappears. It merely changes shape. Employees open envelopes carefully. Discuss health plans over lunch. Compare retirement savings with cautious optimism. The future always feels distant until someone hands you paperwork reminding you that someday you will stop coming to work. Retirement occupies an interesting place in office conversations. Older employees count the years. Younger employees rarely think about it. Then one afternoon, a farewell gathering is announced. George from purchasing is retiring. 42 years. Longer than many co-workers have been alive. The break room fills slowly. A cake appears. Naturally. Someone places old photographs on a table. There is George in 1978. Wide tie. Large glasses. A mustache that somehow seemed entirely reasonable at the time. There he is again in 1986. Standing proudly beside the company's first desktop computer. Another picture from the early 1990s. The first company picnic after moving into this building. The office laughs together. Not at George. With him. He tells stories. About carbon paper. Manual typewriters. The arrival of fax machines. The first computers. The day the building lost power for 6 hours and everyone spent the afternoon talking because there was simply nothing else to do. You realize something. George has witnessed almost every technological revolution the office experienced. He didn't read about history. He quietly lived through it. Every employee does. They just rarely describe it that way. When George leaves, his desk remains empty for several days. The silence feels surprisingly noticeable. Then facilities arrives. The photographs disappear. The drawers empty. A new computer appears. Within weeks, another employee sits there. The cycle continues. Offices, like cities, are always changing while somehow remaining the same. You begin looking around differently now. Not because anything dramatic has happened. Because familiarity has become memory. The coffee stains on the break room counter. The scratch on the conference table. The tiny dent in your filing cabinet from the day someone accidentally rolled a chair into it 5 years ago. These little imperfections no longer feel untidy. They feel lived in. Human. Outside, another spring arrives. Trees bloom beside the parking lot. Employees leave jackets in their cars. Sunlight stays longer each evening. Inside, the office continues its steady rhythm. Phones. Printers. Quiet conversations. The soft clicking of keyboards. These sounds once represented the future. Now they represent the present. Someday, they will represent the past. History works like that. Ordinary noises slowly become nostalgia. And although nobody realizes it quite yet, the office around you is quietly living through its final years before another wave of change will reshape nearly everything. The cubicles still stand proudly. The filing cabinets still guard their mountains of paper. The break room still smells faintly of burnt coffee and microwave popcorn. For now. That is enough. Because sometimes history's most peaceful moments exist not before change, but immediately before it. After the cubicles fell silent, the legacy of the 1990s American office. Eventually, without anyone noticing the exact day it happened, the office you came to know begins to disappear. Not the building. Not immediately. The walls remain standing. The elevators continue climbing their familiar routes. The parking lot still fills every weekday morning. From the outside, everything appears exactly as it always has. But history rarely changes buildings first. It changes habits. One small habit at a time. Email, once treated as an interesting novelty, quietly becomes the primary way people communicate. The fax machine still waits faithfully in the corner. It still receives documents. But fewer than before. Weeks pass without anyone touching it. Then months. One day, someone asks where the fax paper is stored. No one remembers. The machine remains there anyway. Like an elderly employee who has earned everyone's respect simply by surviving. Eventually it disappears during an office renovation. Nobody holds a ceremony. Technology almost never receives funerals. The filing cabinets begin their own slow retreat. Entire rows are emptied as records move onto servers. The old gray cabinets remain for years, half full. Then one weekend, movers arrive. Monday morning reveals a strangely open office. Where steel cabinets once stood, there is only carpet. Employees pause for a moment. The room feels larger. Quieter somehow. As though part of the building's memory has been carefully packed into invisible boxes. Desktop computers grow smaller. Monitors become flat. The enormous CRT screens that once dominated every desk quietly vanish. No one misses lifting them. Their replacements weigh almost nothing. Yet some employees secretly miss the reassuring solidity of the old machines. Progress always leaves behind tiny pieces of affection. The office dress code softens. Casual Friday quietly becomes most days. Ties disappear. Jackets become optional. Comfort wins another small victory. Nobody officially announces the change. It simply happens. The same story repeats itself across countless offices. One rule fades. Another tradition quietly follows. The break room changes too. New coffee machines arrive. The old glass pots finally retire. The refrigerator remains exactly as mysterious as ever. Some things, apparently, exist beyond technological improvement. Somewhere inside it still rests a forgotten container that nobody claims. History has limits. Then, almost imperceptibly, another transformation begins. Laptops. At first, only traveling employees carry them. Sales representatives. Executives. Consultants. Soon more desks contain docking stations instead of permanent desktop towers. Employees carry their work with them. For decades, leaving the office meant leaving work behind. Now, work begins following people home. Not aggressively. Not yet. Just a little. One email checked after dinner. One document reviewed before breakfast. One phone call during vacation. Small changes. History often disguises its largest revolutions as conveniences. The office itself notices. Lights remain on later. Some desks stay occupied longer. The boundary between work and home becomes slightly less certain each year. The people inside adapt, just as they always have. Humans are remarkably resilient creatures. We complain. We adjust. Then we complain about the next adjustment. It is one of our most charming qualities. Years pass. Some co-workers retire. Others transfer. Young employees become managers. Managers become executives. The receptionist who knew everyone's birthday finally decides she's earned a quieter life. A new receptionist arrives. She slowly learns every name. The rhythm continues. Outside the building, entire generations grow up without ever hearing the sound of a dial-up modem. Children who once visited their parents' offices now carry smartphones more powerful than every computer in the building combined. They cannot imagine waiting 10 minutes for a single photograph to load. Or cleaning a mouse with a rubber ball inside it. Or printing 6 copies of a report because everyone at the meeting needed their own. To them, these stories sound almost unbelievable. Rather like hearing that medieval scribes once sharpened goose feathers before writing. Every era possesses its ordinary miracles. Then comes the 21st century's greatest surprise. The office itself becomes optional. Not everywhere. Not for everyone. But for millions. Computers grow portable enough. Internet connections become fast enough. Video calls become reliable enough. The impossible suggestion whispered during snowstorms in the late 1990s. Could someone work from home? Becomes an everyday reality for many professions. Had you asked employees in 1995 whether entire companies might someday meet through computer screens while sitting at kitchen tables, most would have smiled politely. Perhaps laughed. Then returned to the conference room. History enjoys proving certainty wrong. Yet something curious happens as offices become more digital. People begin missing little things they never thought about before. Passing someone in the hallway. Talking while waiting for coffee. Birthday cake in the break room. The familiar squeak of Bob's chair. Even meetings. Well, perhaps not all meetings. Let's remain historically accurate. But some meetings. The spontaneous conversations disappear first. Those tiny exchanges that solved problems before they became emails. The casual friendships formed while waiting for the microwave. The laughter drifting over cubicle walls after someone told an especially terrible joke. Work continues. Productivity often improves. Yet many discover that offices were never only places where work happened. They were communities. Tiny villages built from carpet, fluorescent lights, and coffee stains. Places where people celebrated promotions. Comforted grieving co-workers. Collected money for weddings. Signed retirement cards. Welcomed newborn babies with tiny blue or pink balloons tied to cubicle walls. Shared homemade cookies during holidays. Covered each other's work during illness. Helped one another through divorces, illnesses, and difficult years without ever expecting history to notice. Those moments rarely appeared in annual reports. Yet they may have been the most important work the office ever accomplished. Building human lives alongside professional ones. Now imagine walking through one of those buildings today. Perhaps it has become a medical clinic. Perhaps luxury apartments. Perhaps another company's headquarters. Or perhaps it still serves as an office, though with fewer cubicles and far more open spaces. You recognize almost nothing. Yet if you stand quietly, very quietly, You might still imagine hearing faint echoes. The clicking of mechanical keyboards. The soft ring of desk telephones. The squeal of a fax machine connecting. The rattle of a dot matrix printer. Someone laughing across a row of cubicles. Someone calling out. Does anyone know where the Henderson file is? Somewhere, coffee is brewing. It always seems to be brewing. History rarely disappears completely. It leaves sounds, smells, habits, memories. The 1990s American office was never glamorous. Nobody built monuments to filing cabinets. No poet celebrated quarterly budget meetings. No epic songs praised fluorescent lighting. Yet millions of people quietly spent the best years of their working lives inside those ordinary rooms. They built careers, paid mortgages, raised children, made lifelong friends, learned patience from slow computers, learned diplomacy from difficult meetings, learned kindness from ordinary coworkers. The office asked for consistency more than brilliance. Show up. Do your work. Help your team. Try not to jam the copier. A surprisingly noble philosophy, all things considered. And perhaps that is why remembering those workplaces feels strangely comforting. Because they remind us that history is not only made by kings, presidents, inventors, or generals. History is also made by receptionists greeting visitors every morning. Payroll clerks making sure families receive their paychecks. Secretaries keeping impossible schedules somehow organized. IT technicians rescuing frozen computers with remarkable patience. Managers encouraging nervous new employees. Co-workers sharing coffee during difficult weeks. Millions of ordinary people performing ordinary work with extraordinary consistency. They rarely expected anyone to remember. Yet together, they shaped an entire generation. So now, as evening finally settles outside our imaginary office building, the last employee switches off the light above their cubicle. A jacket is folded over one arm. A briefcase rests comfortably in the other hand. The elevator doors close with a familiar, gentle chime. The lobby grows quiet. The receptionist has already gone home. The parking lot slowly empties beneath a sky turning shades of deep blue and fading gold. Inside, the computers sleep. The telephones wait silently for tomorrow. The coffee pot is empty at last. For the first time all day. The office is completely still. And somewhere, in that gentle silence, beneath the fading hum of fluorescent lights that have witnessed countless ordinary Tuesdays, the memory of the 1990s American office quietly remains. Not because it was exciting. Not because it changed the world overnight. But because, for millions of people, it was simply life. And sometimes, the most ordinary lives leave the longest echoes. End of documentary.